1,700 crore rupees per year. That is what Saudi Arabia is reportedly paying Cristiano Ronaldo to play football in their league. 1,700 crore rupees every single year to one single football player. And if you think that is crazy, wait till you hear this. In 2025, Saudi Arabia was part of a $55 billion deal to acquire EA Games, which is the company behind very popular digital games like FIFA, Apex Legends and The Sims. They bought 80% stake in the football club Newcastle United at $400 million. They are paying WWE somewhere around $1 billion to host 2 events per year in their country. They have a golf league called LIV Golf, which has $400 million in annual prize money, and they also own more than 8% of Nintendo, the gaming company that owns Mario and also partly owns Pokemon. So the question is, has Saudi Arabia completely lost its mind? Because why would a country spend this kind of insane money on sports and gaming? Well, what's actually happening here is not at all madness. It is possibly one of the smartest marketing strategies that we have seen in the last decade. And once you also understand what Saudi Arabia is really doing here, you will also realize that they are playing a game that probably nobody else can even afford to play. And that is what I will talk about in today's video. My name is Anurag Bansal, and this video has been made possible thanks to the support of Zerodha's 01 Media Network. Let us decode. Now first, why is Saudi even doing all of this? See, before I decode the strategy in detail, we'll all need to understand something that is very important. See, the spending craziness is not because they like or enjoy sports or entertainment. It's actually more about survival for them. I'll explain. See, Saudi's economy is almost entirely dependent on oil. Most of their exports, GDP and government budget is all related to oil. And that is a massive problem because oil prices are very unpredictable. To give you a reference, in 2008, oil touched more than $130 per barrel. In 2020, the price for the same oil crashed to $16, and around today it's somewhere about $64. So when your entire economy depends on one single commodity, this kind of crazy volatility can be devastating to say the least. And then there is the bigger issue, which is that oil will not last forever. It's a finite resource, and at some point in time in the world, it is bound to dry out. So the thing is, to tackle all of this, in 2016, Saudi Arabia had announced something that they called Vision 2030. Now this is basically like a deadline, and as part of this, by 2030 they want 50% of their country's GDP to come from non-oil sources. To give you a comparison again, currently that figure is barely around 10% for them. That means Saudi Arabia has less than 5 years to almost completely reinvent their economy, and that is why they are spending money like there is no tomorrow, because for them there literally might be no tomorrow if this transformation happens to fail. Okay, so now that we understand the urgency behind why they're doing what they're doing, let's now take a look at how they are actually executing this entire plan. See, Saudi spending is not just about sports. It is more about distribution, attention, and owning the ecosystem as such. I'll explain this with a very simple example that all of us will understand very quickly. Do you remember when Jio launched in India? I'm sure you obviously do. The thing is, they did not just offer slightly cheaper mobile data as compared to their competitors at that time. They offered it at dirt cheap prices that people just could not say no to. Some people thought Reliance had lost their mind, but in reality what they were doing was buying market share. They were not thinking about profits for today, they were actually trying to own distribution and then trying to make profits for tomorrow. And after that, once everybody was on Jio and once competition was very weak and once the ecosystem was all theirs, that is when they started raising prices and they started making real money. Now Saudi Arabia seems to be doing almost the exact same thing, but instead of telecom, they're doing it in sports and gaming. And the playbook is brutally simple, to be honest with you. Step 1, overpay to get into the door. Step 2, capture the ecosystem. And step 3, set your own terms. Now currently speaking, they're somewhere between step 1 and step 2, and they are spending money like there is no tomorrow. But then the obvious question is, where is all this money actually coming from? That's where we need to know about something that's called the Public Investment Fund, or PIF. This is Saudi's sovereign wealth fund that controls about $1.15 trillion in assets. To put that into perspective, perspective for you, that is more than double of India's entire annual budget. PIF owns more than 97% of Saudi Aramco, which is the oil company that's the world's 8th largest publicly traded company. Aramco, by the way, is also one of the highest profit generating companies in the entire world. So the money cycle is very simple. Aramco prints money from oil and PIF invests it strategically across the world, and the Saudi kingdom controls both of them. That is why spending just 1,700 crore rupees on one footballer does not really seem too crazy to them, because they're not spending recklessly, they're actually investing very meaningfully over here. I'll explain how this strategy plays out across multiple different sports. Let's start with how they're trying to capture football, because that is where Saudi's strategy is the most visible today. See, when Cristiano Ronaldo's contract with Manchester United ended in 2022, a lot of clubs were interested, but none of them could really afford him at his asking price. And then out of nowhere, a random club called Al Nassr, which is a club from Saudi Arabia, made an offer that was absolutely ridiculous: 1,700 crore rupees per year. For context, even at the peak of his career, Ronaldo was earning around 400 to 500 crore rupees per year. So Saudi Arabia literally offered him more than 3 times that same amount. And mind you, it was not even just Ronaldo. Karim Benzema was offered around 800 crore rupees per year, Neymar was bought in for massive money, and whatnot. Now obviously you might listen to all of this and ask, why would Saudi Arabia even pay 3 to 4 times the market rate for footballers? Now the answer becomes very clear when you look at what happened after that. Look, before Ronaldo had joined, almost nobody outside Saudi Arabia cared about their football league. TV rights were cheap, global viewership was basically nothing, and sponsorship interest was also practically zero. But the moment Ronaldo signed, everything changed almost overnight. All of a sudden, millions of fans across the world started watching Saudi Pro League matches just so that they could see Ronaldo play. TV networks that had never ever cared about Saudi football suddenly started bidding for broadcasting rights, and global brands which had completely ignored Saudi sports now suddenly wanted to sponsor teams and their tournaments. So basically, by in some sense overpaying for Ronaldo, Saudi Arabia bought attention, they bought distribution, and they bought legitimacy to their own country's sporting ecosystem. And like we have seen in Jio in the past in India, once you have attention and distribution, you can monetize it in many different ways. But that said, football is just the beginning. Saudi Arabia has quietly been making moves in pretty much every major sport that you can think about. Take Formula 1 for example. Saudi Arabia now hosts a Formula 1 race in Jeddah every single year, and they are reportedly paying more than most other circuits just for hosting rights. And then there's golf, and this one's interesting because in 2022, Saudi launched something called LIV Golf, which is a competitor to the traditional PGA Tour. And they did this by offering prize money that the PGA simply could not match. Top golfers were apparently offered massive signing bonuses just so that they could join LIV Golf. The PGA Tour of course tried to fight back. There was also controversy, there was drama, but by 2023, the PGA Tour had to merge with LIV Golf to end the war. Now, I want you to think about what just happened over here. Saudi Arabia entered a sport where America had dominated for many decades, they threw money at it, and within just 2 years, they forced a merger on their own terms. And then there is also wrestling. WWE has signed a 10-year deal with Saudi Arabia to host premium events over there. And in 2027, WrestleMania, which is WWE's biggest event, will also happen in Riyadh for the first time ever outside North America. And of course, they're spending thousands of crores of rupees to just organize these events. Now you of course might be wondering, that's insane amount of money for just a wrestling show, right? But like you would have figured by now, Saudi is doing this because they can afford to overspend and get their foot in the door right now. They basically want the world to see Saudi Arabia not just as an oil country, but as a global entertainment destination. But now, if you think Saudi's strategy with sports was aggressive, wait till you hear what they are doing in the field of gaming. See, some time ago, you might have heard in the news that Saudi Arabia acquired EA Games for 4.6 lakh crore rupees. For those of you who do not know, EA Games makes some of the world's most popular digital games like FIFA, The Sims, Apex Legends, and dozens of others that hundreds of millions of people play every single day. And by owning EA, Saudi Arabia now has a direct line to gamers across the entire world. So every time somebody plays FIFA and sees Saudi League teams, every time there's a Saudi themed event in Apex Legends, etc., that is massive distribution for them. But EA again is just one of the pieces here. Like I mentioned earlier, Saudi Arabia also owns 8.26% of Nintendo, 96% of SNK, which is a Japanese game developer, and significant stakes in companies like Capcom, Activision Blizzard, Blizzard, Nexon, and Take-Two Interactive. So in some sense, they are buying the entire gaming industry part by part and bit by bit. In fact, they are also building a massive esports complex called Kidya Gaming District, which is designed to host tournaments and attract 1 crore visitors every single year. Now here's the thing about gaming, it's not just entertainment for the sake of entertainment, it's also culture. Gaming is where Gen Z and Gen Alpha today spend most of their time. It is where all of their communities are being formed today, and it is where trends start. So by owning gaming companies and platforms, Saudi Arabia is actually getting access to one of the most valuable demographic in the world, which is young people with disposable income who will be consumers for the next 50 to 100 years. But again, there's another angle here that most people tend to miss. See, about 70% of Saudi Arabia's population is under the age of 35. Now, these are young people who have grown up with gaming, who understand digital culture, who dream of working in technology and entertainment, etc. And the traditional oil industry cannot obviously absorb all of them because there are simply not enough jobs out there. So therefore, by building a gaming and esports ecosystem, Saudi is not just reaching global audiences, they are also creating an entire industry for their own country's youth. They are creating jobs and they are creating a future for themselves as well. So now, if you connect all these dots and you look at everything together, the football signings, the F1 races, LIV Golf, WWE events, EA games, etc., a very, very interesting pattern comes out. Saudi Arabia is not randomly throwing money at things, they are systematically building their way into every major sports and gaming ecosystem that is there on the planet. The strategy, like I said, is very, very simple. Use deep pockets to create a price war that nobody else can survive. Overpay to capture market share, and then once you own the market, set your own terms and play by your own rules. Now I know some of you guys watching this video might be thinking about the controversies as well, about the allegations of sports washing, which is basically using entertainment and sports to change the country's perception in the entire world's eyes. And yes, I agree those concerns are 100% valid to have, but the thing is, those are not easy questions to answer at all. But regardless of what we feel about it, what is undeniable over here is the scale and ambition of what is being attempted over here. Saudi Arabia is trying to transform from an oil-dependent economy to a diversified tech and entertainment-driven economy, and they seem to be willing to spend whatever it takes to get there. The question is, will it work? Now that's obviously, honestly, the multi-trillion-dollar question, because the reality is that the clock for oil-dependent countries is ticking very, very quickly. The world is moving towards renewable energy, electric vehicles are becoming mainstream, and the younger generation across the entire world is increasingly getting climate conscious. So Saudi Arabia is in a race against time. They need to build a post-oil economy before the oil economy collapses, and sports and gaming seems to be their best bet to get there very quickly. Why? Because sports and gaming give them three things simultaneously: global attention, which is billions of eyeballs watching their country; soft power, which is cultural influence that money alone just cannot buy; and third is economic diversification, which includes tourism, entertainment, and technological jobs for their own young population. Now, of course, this is a long-term and a really, really expensive bet, but if it pays off, it'll be one of the smartest marketing and distribution plays ever executed by any country. And the scary part is that almost no other country can realistically afford to compete with this very strategy. That's all for today's video. What do you think about Saudi Arabia's strategy? I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a discussion. Also, if you found this analysis insightful and useful, do hit that like button, and please do subscribe to my channel for more such deep dives into marketing, business, and culture. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.